Hello and welcome to a new video. In this one I will explain how I personally have set up my VR headset. This was requested many times. I will discuss how I have set up the headset itself, but also the software layers under the sim, but of course also what in-game options to choose to get clear graphics and to get good performance. But I want to point out a few things before we start really. First, that all this is very much work in progress. However, as of this date, I have a stable, good-looking game and a competitive setup. I feel confident enough to share it, as I believe it nudges you in the right direction even though you're just starting off, or maybe you have it already running and you can then cross-check basically your options against mine, and maybe you even have some inputs then back for me, for us, and can share it in the comments. Just keep in mind that I still sometimes test things and that my setup could look quite differently, let's say in 2 months or something like this, especially if I get now some feedback in the comments. Maybe I'll do then an updated video if it's worth it. Then next, all of this was not completely thought out by me. I adjusted a couple of things, but mostly I read the documentations of the different software developers. I read the different articles on the forums and stuff, but of course I also watched YouTube videos of other content creators who have hopefully more experience with VR than I do, and I of course mirrored their options, and I will share their YouTube channels and their videos in the description below, so you can check them out yourself and can cross-check against mine and against your own setup. They surely deserve your visit on their channels, and very well done overall. And lastly, of course, I only comment on my personal hardware and software stack. It's working for me. I cannot, of course, provide any extended support. I'm not the right person for that. And of course, any support requests belong to the software, either software developers or the hardware manufacturers. But I think overall I can give good tips here in this video, and I will share all my experience I have so far with my VR headset. Now all that out of the way, let's start with my personal setup. I'm using a MetaQuest 3 and I power it, as of this recording, with an Intel i7 14700K and an MSI 4070 Ti Super and 32 GB of RAM. VR was and is very much hardware demanding. You can run VR with a lower tier hardware obviously, but it's always better to have faster hardware. So far, there is still no hardware with diminishing returns. More means more, meaning ideally you have a 4090 and a very beefy Intel CPU, for example. Especially the single core performance of the Intel CPUs is quite good. However, I'm not really familiar with the AMD CPUs, but even there, the higher performance they have, the better it is. Currently, I use the VR headset in a tethered configuration, meaning I have it connected with an USB-C to A cable to my PC. I will link to a video of a YouTuber who goes by the name of Ham in the description, where he describes the general hardware setup of the Quest 3. I will skip the general setup in this video, but I essentially mirrored his setup. And it served me very well. I also got the cable shown in that video. I will put a link in the description, but also check out his video how to set it up, but it's pretty easy overall. With the hardware I'm running, the headset is at a resolution of 5152 times 2752 pixels per eye, set up in the Oculus app, and at 90 Hz. That resolution gives me a nice balance between performance and quality. Everything is crisp enough, but at the same time I save some performance by leaving some of the pixels on the table. I personally tried to run IL-2 at 80 Hz to save some performance, but didn't find the experience enjoyable at all. But I'm quite sensitive to everything FPS and Hertz, so 90 Hz it is for me. I also reduced the brightness of the set to 1/3 of the maximum brightness in the in VR set setting. If you set it too high, the bright sun and the clouds in-game are very uncomfortable to look at, and it really hurts and stresses you off. If you experience something similar, try to turn down the brightness of the set a little bit. It should help you out. Beyond that, I bought two things to make my VR experience more comfortable. First, I replaced the stock facial interface with a softer polyurethane interface. I found the stock interface of the Quest 3 way too hard and uncomfortable. Actually, it induced some headaches in my opinion. And secondly, I got myself prescription lenses from the VR Optician. So I don't need to wear glasses under my headset. And due to these two things, my entire VR experience is way more comfortable and is less stressful. I recommend to get the entire VR experience as comfortable as possible. Playing multiple hours in VR is way more taxing than in 2D, initially at least, and every bit of quality of life will bring huge improvements in the long run of your VR play session. As soon as you notice any uncomfortable things while playing, you should address that at some point, because in the long run the experience will be much better if you resolve that. This out of the way, this is basically my hardware setup. I will go and switch to my desktop. I will show you some settings. I have it in the different apps I'm using, and see you there. Welcome to my desktop here. I want to quickly show you the different tools I use with my Quest 3, some of which are mandatory to use to set up things, and some other tools are more hidden, I would say. And the first one I want to show you is quite hidden, and that is the Occulus Debug Tool. You find it on your system if you have everything installed under Program Files, Oculus Support, and then Oculus Diagnostics. And then there's the Oculus Debug Tool .exe file, and you want to maybe put a link to the file on your desktop. In this case, I have it on the taskbar. I've started the program, and I just mainly wanted to show you my setup. I have mainly mirrored that setup from other YouTubers, especially from a YouTuber, Virtual Warbirds. He did a great video on it and went over the different setups, and I'm basically mirrored his setup. And the most important stuff you want to take a look at is asynchronous space warp. That is basically generation of frames in between the proper rendered frames, and if that happens, so the FPS goes below the desired FPS, 90 in my case, the set starts to put in artificial frames, and this causes all kinds of weird glitches. And for example, sometimes the planes look like they have 4 wings, or they're flapping their wings, and that looks very bad. So you want to disable that really. Another thing I want to put emphasis on here, most of the stuff is well explained by the Virtual Warbirds, by the Warbirds channel. But I want to, this one here, this is what I noticed. Many YouTubers recommend to put that on the maximum value, which is, I don't know, 940 or something like this. But this caused me noticeable input lag. So basically the delay between game and the headset is already quite high if you are used to screen playing on 2D. But in this case, the delay got even larger. And as soon as I put that down to 500, which is the maximum supported value, the input lag got much better. And the rest of the setting are way better explained by the other YouTubers I mentioned earlier. And I leave it at that. Okay, close that. Another software which is of interest is of course the official app here. I just want to quickly open it and show you the current settings. I have it connected right now, and somewhere here is the resolution. Actually, I don't touch that very often these days, so I really have to look right now. Here it is. Okay, and this is basically the resolution I have set up, but I try to go higher here in the resolution. I would like to do that in the future as soon as I have enough performance, but currently this, like I said, gives me enough performance and still leaves some performance for me on the table to use it for in-game settings. That's basically it. After you have your setup running, you have now configured your Occulus Debug Tool and your official app. The first thing you want to do is to bypass SteamVR. SteamVR is the default to run IL-2. Sadly, it's a massive performance drain. You want to use OpenXR Toolkit and Composite. These are easily installed via the links in the description. If you have problems installing the software, there are plenty of videos around explaining it, but also the documentation of both softwares can be of help. I will therefore skip over the installation in this one. After you have installed everything, IL-2 will now boot automatically with OpenXR and not SteamVR anymore. This alone will bring a massive performance boost. Initially, I used with the headset just stock 4070, and the 12 GB of VRAM were completely used up when IL-2 was running via SteamVR. And after the switch to OpenXR, the VRAM usage dropped to around 5 GB. So that alone was something. Everything what I tell you now is also derived from videos from other creators, primarily from the Virtual Warbirds channel. Link is also below. But also a YouTuber goes by the name OG Iceman VR. The videos will show you how to use OpenXR and Composite, but also show you settings from the NVIDIA control panel. I mirrored these settings. But please be aware that I'm not sure if the NVIDIA settings really did much, and these two YouTubers didn't explain much about the background of the settings. So all these settings could be some kind of snake oil, maybe they aren't. But again, I mirrored the settings and it runs very well, so it did not hurt really. Iceman also tinkered with the startup.ini file from the game and its resolution settings, and I personally did not at all. And I don't notice any crashes or any detriment really. But now let's boot up the game, and I will show you first the Composite settings and then some in-game details. I will go over it and explain a few things. So welcome, we are now in-game here. And in the Composite or in the Open Toolkit app, you can assign hotkeys to control the Composite. And for me, it's just arrow down on the keyboard, and this opens up this menu here. And I hope it's not shaking too much, and it closes again after a few seconds. So you need to keep pressing some buttons in my case. And I have set up a few things here. And I want to go over the different categories here one by one, and we start off with performance. Maybe I just use a still here actually, because maybe it just shakes too much when I have the headset on and I'm talking here. But I try. So the overlay settings here is just a setting where you can enable different HUD elements here, in this case just FPS, and you get more information the further right you go here. I sometimes use FPS or even advanced when I try new settings, and this gives you FPS and frame times and stuff, very useful stuff. You can get a similar thing via the Occulus Debug Tool, and there you see how much CPU headroom you have and how much GPU headroom you have. Very, very, very useful if you just set up things and you want to see how much performance you still have available to you. I can recommend to, at least if it's running quite okay, to go into a multiplayer server with lots of load, a combat box for example, and then just fly around, have a fight or two, and when you land, and record everything with the in-game recording. And then when you are done with that, and later if you want to tune things more, you just replay one of these replay files here, and the performance you get from just replaying it will be very, very similar from what you get in game. You need to be in the cockpit, obviously. I can recommend to do that. And yeah, well, so this is the first setting here. Other YouTubers, I think it was the Virtual Warbirds guy that maybe setting this to 91, I think it was Iceman, sorry, in either case. Setting this to 91 FPS here helps sometimes to have some headroom, and I just mirrored this and it works well. I think I think it did something, but I'm not quite sure. Maybe snake oil, who knows. I can really not stress enough how much CAS really helps me getting performance. So I have this set up to CAS, not FSR and not NSS. The others were very bad and very blurry. I really like CAS. The result here was way more crisp and was also way more, more crisp in the end, and got me good performance here. I will quickly change how long the menu stays here. Okay, no timer. No timer is good for this tutorial. All right, so now the menu is not disappearing at all. I really like that. All right, so I'm like I said, I'm using CAS. It's a sharpening filter essentially, but it also brought me some performance, and I really like that. The filter therefore reduces lots of sharpness, like a sharpness filter. I like I don't know if you are familiar with that, but the game also has a sharpness option or a sharpening option, and the filter is very similar to that. But I really don't like that effect too much. People like it because they apparently can spot better, but I really would recommend to tune this down quite a bit. I just added a bit of sharpness, 20%. So it smoothes out some edges and jaggies from the aliasing I have in game. So I have it just a little bit. Turbo mode, never tried it. Don't know if it really works. I leave it off. Apparently this could give better performance. I tried it on and off and noticed absolutely no difference, so I rather have it off. Appearance. I have post-processing off. You can adjust here the colors or even different lighting selections here. So for example, if the sun is very bright in game, you can just basically like sunglasses here. Even say sunglasses. So you can put on sunglasses via this. I don't use it anymore since I have tuned down the brightness of the headset itself much better. I don't use it at all, so I turn it off. I can recommend, however, to increase the world scale a little bit. This basically increases the cockpit size a little bit by 15% in this case. It's a bit unrealistic in more narrow cockpits, but it gives you a bit more room in the cockpit to turn your head around, and basically evens out the playing field against Tracker R users a little bit, because you can turn around your head a little bit better and very similarly to Tracker R users. So I can recommend to increase this a little bit. I don't use it massively because I mean you have to move them a lot to get around your headdress and whatnot. Nothing changed here, so I will skip over this. Alright, resolution, I have it at no, so I'm using the resolution I set up in my Oculus app. You could upscale the game with this, like you can then basically blow the picture up until basically reach maybe the native resolution of the set. I personally just have it on no. I'm using the resolution I've set up in the app, and I'm quite happy with this. Of course, if you increase this, the CAS filter will then upscale the picture. That will save a little bit performance against using that particular resolution, just like that. But again, if you increase it, of course, you will also increase the demand on your PC. I haven't changed anything here at all. Field of view, maybe you can increase this technically, but also this surely will cost performance, so I have it off. Haven't tinkered with that at all. And this is just some settings for the in-game performance. And here you can basically adjust how quickly this menu here disappears. And I have it on short, so it disappears quickly when I don't touch anything. That's it for the OpenXR Open Composite settings I'm using. I don't use much more. CAS highly recommended because performance gains and visuals. This is how I roll now for a couple of weeks, and it's working quite nicely for me. I want to take a look at the graphics of me. I will go over them and will explain which ones are very, very intensive and which ones aren't. The first thing I want to recommend is use a balanced preset at the maximum, at least for decently affordable graphics cards, let's put it that way. I'm pretty sure maybe with a 4090 you can go ultra here, but the difference in quality between balanced, high and ultra are rather small, but at the same time I would guess maybe 20% less frames on ultra than balanced. So I would recommend to go balanced here. And I would like to increase this if possible, but not at the moment. The main thing you gain here is crisper textures on aircraft, better effects like fire, smoke and all this. But as soon as you have a scene with lots of smoke, you really want to have this balanced preset, otherwise you get stutters and problems. Then screen resolution, that is not really affecting the resolution of your headset, but it is the mirror which is running on your desktop. I personally have set up different things here. Many people just show a tiny picture on the main screen then, but I personally haven't noticed any performance difference between this and a smaller resolution sized mirror on the PC, so I have it just in the default, and then I can use basically this setup also to review my recordings on my 2D screen later or something like this. Shadows quality. Shadows are very hardware intensive, so if you're struggling, I would recommend to turn them low or off. Low I find very ugly. I really like my shadows. I have them therefore set to high. If you want to save performance, this is something you really want to consider off or high. But I really like my shadows. This gives the entire world just looks more vivid with shadows and crisper shadows. So I really set this to high. Mirrors simple. Mirrors cost performance. I don't use mirrors often, so I have it to simple. Setting them higher would be nice, but it's not really that important. Landscape detail is interesting because the landscape gets really ugly if you set it to lower or normal. And it's not affecting performance too much, so it's 4 times. Canopy reflections are also quite intensive. Nice to have, but don't look that good in game. In my opinion, they look very generic, I would say, not like real reflections. So I have it to off. Horizon draw distance is also a good option to save performance, but it's very ugly and hazy if you use anything below 100 kilometers. But saves you good performance. If you really want to look for performance, here's something you can use. I use it 100 kilometers. It's a good compromise between looking very far and Landscape filter sharp. If you use blurred, it looks you can spot way better against the ground, especially at further distance. But I like my sharp looking ground better. It looks more realistic to me, so I use sharp. Terrain roughness is basically how the terrain gets rendered. It looks more detailed, with more depth to it, so it's high for me, and I don't think it affects performance too much. Grass quality is mostly something just for the proximity of the aircraft. If you're standing on the ground on the airfields, the grass on ultra is just a lot of grass, and it's very high, and it looks unrealistic to me. And normal or whatever else is available here looks not realistic, so I just have it on off. Also looks unrealistic, but at least costs then less performance on the ground, and especially on the airfields you have sometimes difficulties with performance here and there, so I have it on off. Clouds quality low. Also they cost quite a bit of performance, and the quality increase is very gradual, and extreme doesn't look that much better than high. And since they cost, I would again say like 10 to 20% performance from low to extreme, I have it on low. The last of these settings here is the anti-aliasing type, and if you use MSAA, it will cost a lot of performance, but also will look much better. You can, in my experience, if you increase the in-game or the headset's resolution to the maximum, it doesn't look as good as you would use MSAA, because for some reason the game renders its planes, especially the planes, not so good in just without anti-aliasing. So if you have some performance left over from these settings, that's maybe you want to use MSAA and anti-aliasing at least set at 2 times, because the game has the weird tendency to basically swallow the wings of aircraft which are flying in front of you, or at least at medium distances. So if you have some performance left, you want to use MSA 2 times. But if you are like me and you have the headset's resolution already quite high, FXAA and maybe here 2 times to at least compensate for the game's behavior a little bit by using at least 2 times FXAA. FXAA is much less intensive. Then you have a good experience, but at the same time save some performance. You never want to use target FPS, because if you use target FPS, the game tries to reach the desired FPS. If you set this lower than this, then this option becomes available. I thought it is. Maybe that's off when HMD is on, VR is on. But you don't want to use this even when you are playing in 2D. Just leave it to off and full here. Full screen is just the 2D full screen on screen. Leave it off if you want to be able to tap out very quickly. The game is pretty weird when trying to tap out. However, if you notice crashes of the game or something like this, then you might want to turn full screen again, because also the game crashed on me in the past a bit earlier sometimes when I used the windowed mode or the borderless windowed mode, like the game is here with full screen off. That's just the VR setting, so we can skip over this. Very hardware demanding is SSAO, but also looks quite nice. Especially it's basically when multiple shadows are overlapping, the stuff in the overlapping area gets even darker than this, and looks quite nice, but costs also lots of performance, so I leave that off. HDR is something with brightness, high dynamic range. Does not look good in game, does not really work that well, doesn't cost a lot of performance, but at the same time just keep it disabled. It looks weird. Sharpen filter, I already have this with my CAS filter, but I really hated this in 2D. I think the game does not look nice with sharpen, so keep that off. 4K textures does not use performance at all, so keep them on. And distance buildings is that cities and stuff get rendered at longer ranges. So really helpful to navigate. Keep that on if you have a decent CPU. I think this is mostly CPU demanding, I'm not quite sure. But if you have performance left, keep that on. The game looks much better and you can navigate much easier. But that's basically it for my setup, up until this point at least. I will put up a lot of stuff, I guess most of the script I've wrote for this video, up on my webpage, sheriffsimshack.com. Link is also in the description. And I will put up as much as I can on that page. And it will get a dedicated category for the VR stuff. I had it already for the 2D stuff, but I will create a VR section there. But that's it for this video. I see you in the next one.